Hey TCSTV viewers, it's Dave and Evelyn from the Camera Store, and we are coming to you from the Camera Store Live because we have a very special event tonight with Panasonic. It's a tech talk featuring a couple new cameras.
This is a big day for Panasonic. They launched a brand new GH5 II, an update to a very popular camera. They hinted at some GH6 specs and a new lens. And, we launched our own video this morning, actually, about this video.
Yeah, and we'll be getting to that a little bit later. But I want to let you know that we have the Canadian Panasonic Lumix team here with us tonight. And so we'll introduce them shortly. But we're going to have Daniel and Trisha coming from out east, so they're a little bit ahead of us in time, but they're joining us tonight to talk about the brand new GH5 II and the GH6 development announcement. And so we're going to get to a live Q&A after they present some of the key details that you may not have heard about yet. But speaking of going live, tonight we have our TCSTV Dream Team with us. We have Gary, Drew, and Riley working behind the scenes. And of course, they always do such a good job making sure that we have this show up and running. And if anything goes wrong with it being live, do hold on to your seats. Stay tuned. We'll try to update you in the comments. But we're hoping for a really good live stream tonight. And for the Q&A, there's a couple options for how you can interact with us and have your questions answered. So you can do so right in the YouTube chat window, or I also have my email open. And so if you're not logged into YouTube, you can just email them to me at evelyn@thecamerastore.com. And I've already had a few emailed to me earlier. But before we introduce our Panasonic guests, let's talk a little bit about what Dave and Drew published this morning. What can people expect to see from the hands-on preview that you did?
So I'm really excited about this camera. The fact that we've been using the GH5 to record TCSTV for years now, it's a tried and true performer for us. We love the results we get out of it. So an update to the camera is very exciting. And for me, if you watch the video, what I thought was really exciting about it, of course there's a bunch of new specs and it's an improvement, but the ability to live stream directly through the camera is really important.
Yeah, and there's some interesting things that that you guys uncovered, and one of them has to do with live streaming. And for newer content creators, Drew was telling me that he ran into a limitation where if you have a newer channel, you only have 1,000 subscribers, YouTube doesn't normally allow you to do mobile streaming. However, with the new Panasonic GH5 II, it actually creates a workaround and bypasses that option. And so you can actually do streaming remote, wherever you are, if you're like at an event or you're on a shoot or whatever you want to do. It gives you some added flexibility, and you can directly stream with Facebook, YouTube, and then it also has an RTMP URL input, so you can stream to things like Twitch, if you have like a custom live, lots of other live streaming options that are very popular these days. The only platforms that aren't really compatible with anything that's not a phone is, of course, like TikTok and Instagram, but otherwise the GH5 II gives you a ton of flexibility, and I thought that was a really cool feature that, that you can bypass that limit that YouTube has on mobile.
Well, what it does, it really allows you, if you are live streaming remotely, we've always been relying on our phone, and as good as the cameras are on their phone, we didn't have that option for a more sort of cinematic look if we wanted higher quality production value. Now with the GH5 II, you can do that, and I was able to set it up myself, so it worked out okay.
Yeah, and I think we've always been fans of the GH5 because with TCSTV, I mean, it came out in 2017. We started in 2018, and Jordan and Chris before us, they also used the GH5. And I remember they switched from more of like a cinema camera to the GH5, and it was a camera that was so ahead of its time. It was kind of the pioneer in being able to do a lot of 4K recording options, and it had a lot of features that cinematographers were excited about. I mean, you had built-in vector scopes, waveforms, the ability to do anamorphic shooting, and there wasn't a lot of other cameras in the market that could compete with it. And at the price point it is, it's just been a very solid video tool for, again, early content creators, new people that are getting into video, as well as people that are old, people that have been shooting for a long time.
What are you saying?
Yeah, no, we've been at this for a while, and it's just been such a great tool in that regard. And so, yeah, we're going to get to our guests with Trisha and Daniel from Panasonic Canada, and we thank them so much for coming on. And so welcome, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Oh, well, thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
awesome. And of course, I know it's getting later in Ontario, but we, again, so appreciate your time. And so, why don't you go ahead and give us kind of just an overview of what the GH5 Mark II has that is new compared to the previous GH5 model?
Sure. First, I want to just start out by saying if anyone noticed today's announcements, there was a bit of a theme to them, and that theme was Micro Four Thirds. And there's been so much talk in the media over the past year about the viability of Micro Four Thirds as a format. Is it dead? Is it not dead? So, with today's announcement, Panasonic really wanted to reiterate their commitment to this form factor. We're announcing 2 brand new cameras, a new lens, and some updates to our current Micro Four Thirds cameras. So really, that was the whole statement today. This format is not going away. We're behind it 100%, and we're putting money into developing new bodies and new lenses for it. So that being said, one of the biggest questions we've been asked is what are the differences between GH5 and GH5 Mark II? So if you just let me share this screen for you, I will show you.
Awesome. And while she's doing that, I'll just reiterate that if you have any questions throughout the whole presentation, put them in the comments or send me an email to evelyn@thecamerastore.com. And between both of those, I will be collecting them as we go on, and we'll have lots of time for questions after we do this overview.
Great. So you'll see on this sheet, there's a lot of specs. So anything that is in black is a carryover from GH5. Anything that's in burgundy is an update to this new GH5 Mark II, and anything that's in gold, we will be releasing firmware later this year to update it. So this is one thing that we're known for, is the second we announce a new camera, we announce the firmware update plan. So customers know that we're always going to be putting resources into making this camera better and better and better. We're not just going to release it and abandon it. So that's good for our customers to know. So a few of the key upgrades for this is first off, Cinema 4K and 4K in 60 frame, 10-bit, no cropping. Now the GH5 was not able to do this internally. So now you can record Cinema 4K or 4K in 10-bit 60p internal with no sensor crop. The other thing is you can also record that Cinema 4K and 4K up to 60 frames, both internally and externally via HDMI at the same time. So if you want to have a backup recording to an SD card while you're outputting it or recording to an external recorder, that's completely possible. One of the other upgrades is it now comes with the V-Log-L pre-installed. So you do not have to buy a separate software key and, do that install that people love to hate. So that is pre-installed. So that's, in Canada, it's $130 value that you're saving by having it ship already installed. We added some new picture profiles, Cinelike D2 and Cinelike V2, which will just make it easier for people to match their footage from Vericam, from EVA 1, even from S1H. So we're just adding more options for today's video creators. One of the other things we did is, yes, it is, as Dave mentioned in his video, the same sensor, but we added an anti-reflective coating to cut down on ghosts and flares that were coming through the lens onto the sensor. So that really cuts down on that. One of the biggest updates is the new engine that we added in it. So the GH5 had quite a few limitations just because of the engine that was in it. We were not able to update it to the level where the rest of our newer cameras were. So this now enables us to do a lot of updates that weren't possible for GH5. And one of the biggest ones is the update to autofocus. So there's a huge difference between GH5 autofocus and this new camera, including face, eye, body, head, and animal detection. So it's about 2 times faster to pick up versus GH5. The other big update is the internal body stabilization. So the GH5 was 5 stops, and this new camera is now 6.5 stop shutter speed reduction using the IBIS, and that's up to 280 millimeters. So even if you're using a long lens, you still have that 6.5 stops up to 280. The LCD screen is still free angle. Yay, everyone loves a free angle LCD. But now it has a higher resolution, and it's a different color profile than the GH5. So it's much brighter and easier to see outdoors. It now has USB power charge and delivery. So it's a new battery in this camera, the BLK22, so it's higher capacity battery. And you now have the ability to power it and charge it through USB. So you can be charging the battery while you're shooting at the same time. So it really, enables you to shoot for as long as you want. If you've got a USB power pack, you can just keep powering it. And then the battery will be there as a backup in case your USB power pack runs out of power. You've still got battery power. So it's great. And good news for GH5 users, it's backwards compatible with all those BLF19 batteries that GH5 users have. So you can still use those batteries in this new body, and they will charge in the new charger that comes with it as well. So it's great. And as Dave mentioned in his video, wireless live streaming is a huge new update on this. And the reason we did that is because we realized that, especially since COVID hit, live streaming is now the biggest, new thing in video, especially for the everyday person. A lot of us who never had dreamed we'd be live streaming before, now it's part of our lives. So with this new camera, you'll be able to connect wirelessly to your smartphone or to a router, especially if you have unlimited data somewhere, and stream without any wires or cables. Okay. Now for the updates, we're going to be releasing Live View Composite, which is a photo feature. So yes, this camera does take photos, believe it or not, later this year. And also we'll be releasing live streaming via USB tether. So you can tether to your smartphone. And also wired IP streaming direct to your PC. So you'll be able to get a USB to Ethernet dongle and connect from the camera directly to a laptop or something like that, and kind of get rid of the middleman, which was your capture card, because it will still give you audio, which is great, as well as the wireless live streaming. So all kinds of new features. And yes, this is the Canadian pricing at the bottom, $21.49 for the body, and the kit is $28.99 with the Leica 12 to 60 millimeter lens. So all in all, there's a lot of new features packed in here. Great. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this, and I guess we're probably time for some questions, though I know that's a lot of information to digest.
Yes, well, thanks for going through a lot of those details. And yeah, we do have a lot of questions and just some things that Dave and I have noticed in checking out the camera. We were very fortunate that we got a pre-production unit that we're able to test. So that was fantastic. And for me, I think the biggest thing is that the GH5 was already a very capable camera. I think I said it before that it was kind of ahead of its time when it was first released, but it was definitely due for an upgrade. And the one thing that is the biggest upgrade, of course, is the processor. And so the first question that I was curious about is, with the new processor, is that the thing that's in the camera that will allow it to have the firmware updates that we were seeing in some of the other models, like the GH5S, the G9, and with that, is it the same processing engine as those cameras, or is this a totally new system?
It is the same engine that's in, yes, GH5S, G9. It's the same engine that's in our newer cameras, the S5, the BGH1, the S1H. And really, it allows us the ability to do that faster autofocusing, because the engine in the GH5 couldn't physically handle all that AI that we were trying to feed into it to make it recognize, someone's head when they're turned to the side. That takes a lot of processing speed to be able to handle kind of that. And we were not able to upgrade GH5 to give it that faster autofocusing speed because of the engine.
Okay, and then one other follow-up question on the processor is, if it is the same engine as those models, do you anticipate having the live streaming functionality brought out to the other GH series models that have that level?
What we're going to do is look at the needs of the customers. What are they asking for? So right now we have a very, very capable unit, obviously in GH5 Mark II. We also have the BGH1, our box camera, which is great for live streaming as well. So what we normally do is look at what's going on in the world. What are people asking for? What are they looking for? Do we need another 3 or 4 cameras in our lineup that can do this wireless live streaming? And if the answer is yes, then we can look at that as well.
Okay, so I mean, if we have lots of people say they want to bring live streaming to their GH5S or G9, yeah, be loud.
Yeah, live streamers unite. Let's
live streamers unite.
There's so many forums out there where people put their wish list of what they want for Panasonic cameras. And, we do feed this information to our engineering team, and they do pay attention. You're not going to get 100% everything that you ask for, but you may get some things off that list, and sooner than you think. So, there's always hope.
Awesome.
Excellent. I have to applaud you. The power delivery system, being able to charge the camera and power the camera through USB-C is a huge factor for live streaming. So I applaud you guys for putting that on there. And I did notice that this camera focuses significantly faster than the original GH5. So I was really pleasantly surprised by that. Is there still going to be more updates and more AI that's going to be put into it for different subjects potentially? Are we sort of just seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the autofocus on this system right now?
Mm-hmm. There's always room for improvement. That's what I'm going to say.
Good answer. Good answer,
That
Trish.
was a good answer. That was a good answer. Well, and again, with Panasonic, I mean, to be fair, you guys have had a lot of firmware updates, even with the GH5 alone, from when it was first brought out to its current life now. And I mean, it's always great to see that autofocus system in particular always has a lot of benefit from updated algorithm information. So that's great. We have a question, which maybe this is a good one for Daniel. This is from Kevin in Vancouver. And he was wondering if you can use the zoom assist when you're in the middle of recording. It says the GH4 and GH5 cannot, but some of the Sony video systems can do this.
Hi, Kevin. Very sorry, but as far as I'm aware, it is still not able to do that at the moment. I know that is something that is very highly requested. So we are going to work on trying to fix that issue in the future.
Okay. So another question that I have is, there's been a lot of talk in the market about cameras overheating in the last couple of years. I mean, the boundaries have been pushed a lot with different camera specs and that kind of thing. And Panasonic always has seemed very committed to making sure that reliability and longevity for longer form video recording is a priority. And so can you talk a little bit about what Panasonic is doing with the GH line to continue to push this? I know Dave was talking about the power delivery system, but is there anything else on that same vein that you guys are doing?
Sure. Thermal management has always been a top priority for our engineering team ever since they launched the GH. They would rather delay coming out with a new model or take off features if it's going to cause problems with overheating. We also test our cameras to a higher standard than almost every other company. Our recording times are rated to 40 degrees Celsius. So if we say a camera has unlimited 4K 60 10-bit recording, it's rated to 40 degrees Celsius. A lot of other companies are rated much, much, much lower than that. So that's the standard that we set for ourselves. And, it's been something that we always want to adhere to. The reason that the S1H and the BGH1 had a little fan is so that we could extend those recording times and offer our customers what we felt they deserved. And they deserve as long a recording time as we can get for them.
Yeah, and maybe you can speak a little bit about one of my favorite features on the GH5 is the ability to actually hot swap batteries and memory cards. And it's something you could do on the GH5. I mean, I assume you can still do it on the GH5 Mark II. And it's great to see that now the card slots are both V90 compatible as well.
I'm going to let Daniel answer that one because he loves hot swapping.
Excellent.
Wow.
I'm raving about it.
We always try to think about the best things that we can offer to our customers, especially at the high end. This is something that is kind of a fringe benefit for many companies that maybe other companies wouldn't even think to offer. But perhaps you're someone that needs to be continuously recording a live session, whatever that may be, and you just don't have the ability to have one memory card. You want to be able to just switch it from one to another to make sure that you're not interrupting the recording. And of course, you can also do that with the battery. When you set it up with the battery grip, you can actually tell the camera specifically, I want you to draw power directly from the battery grip first. And then when that starts to run out, start to draw the power directly from the camera or the battery inside of the camera. And as you start to draw down the battery power, you can just take out the battery out of the battery grip, put a new one in, and you're as good as gold. No interruption. You're making sure that you're running. And I like to kind of equate it to, we're using the analogy of a very reliable car. We're maybe not going to design the fastest car, but we're going to make sure that we're getting you home and we're getting the job done.
Excellent. And you were saying that the grip is backwards compatible with for previous GH5 users. Is that correct?
Yes. So the BLF19 battery, which any of our GH4, GH5, G9 users are familiar with, you can still use those batteries. So you don't have to run out and spend money buying, another 4 or 5 new batteries. You can still use them in the camera, and they will charge in the new charger that you get with GH5 Mark II.
So you actually get a charger in the box?
Yes, yeah. The only thing you can't do is charge your new batteries, which is a BLK22, in the old GH5 charger, because there's an extra pin set on the new battery and it won't read the old charger. So old batteries in new charger. That's the story.
Cool. So we've been talking like live streaming and more video functionality. What improvements does this new processor have to do with photography?
So, I mean, the biggest thing I would say is the autofocusing. So for people who are, in Alberta, who are wildlife photographers or like to do birds or, sports, you'll get that benefit of the autofocus update for photo. You'll also get the anti-reflective coating on the sensor. So if you're doing nighttime shooting, you won't be getting flares off any outdoor lighting that you would normally get. And then we'll be adding live view composite, which enables you to take things like star trails or light painting or, car lights, long exposure car lights. And then you can take multiple images and it will stack them all in the camera. So you don't have to use external post-processing to do it. So that's a great update for photo versus the GH5.
Okay, we have another question here. Because the S5 is similar in price, Daniel, can you speak to some of the features that, although you're going up to full frame with the S5, that the S5 is actually lacking compared to the GH5 Mark II?
Absolutely. So the S5, it is still going to offer you that higher dynamic range, better low light capability, and it is a phenomenal camera for creatives. But I think some people that do a run and gun, they might run into the limitation of when you're shooting in Super 35 or you're shooting at 4K 60p, it will have to automatically crop to make sure that you are getting that full 4K on it. Regularly, it does do 6K downsample to 4K, but unfortunately, going to 60p is not able to keep up with the heat management. So as a result, it has to crop. Now, with the GH5 Mark II, you're not going to run into that issue. You're always going to be able to shoot full width readout on 4K 24, 30, or 60 frames per second. So that is going to be a massive benefit for anyone that's doing any type of run and gun videography. On the other hand as well, from our testing, in terms of autofocusing comparing to the S5, it actually does perform quite a bit better than even that. And like the S5, it also performs at its best when it's running at 60 frames per second. So you're going to get that wonderful benefit without any cropping having to.
And is that just because it's able to scan the sensor a lot faster because it's a smaller sensor, or is there anything else built into the algorithm that's different?
Well, the DFT, it runs on the most information that is possible. So that's at 60 frames per second. You're scanning at about, I think, 120 hertz at that point. So you're making sure that you're getting as much information as possible. And on top of that, it doesn't hurt that it is inherently a deeper depth of field that you're getting at a micro four thirds.
Okay. Now, if someone wanted raw output and then they wanted like true V-Log, can you talk a little bit about what the difference is between V-Log and V-Log L that's found in the GH5 Mark II?
I'll let Trish take this one.
Danielle. So the V-Log was developed for our Vericam cinema lineup. When we launched Micro Four Thirds, we came out with V-Log L, which is kind of a light version. So the color science is similar. It's not going to be 100%. And you will, obviously, if you're using full frame, you're going to get more highlight and shadow information than you would versus Micro Four Thirds. But it's the closest matchup we can get on a Micro Four Thirds sensor versus what you're going to get on a full frame sensor.
Okay, so I was a little surprised. We have a brand new sensor here, but we still don't have raw external recording. Is there a reason for that, or are we positioning the camera a certain place for certain videographers?
We have not announced any raw on this camera. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Oh, so Trisha's smiling.
Yeah. We just announced today that we're doing raw output on our GH5 which is actually, a 3-year-old camera. So we do like to do these firmware updates on other models to increase the value to our customers. So if we find people are asking for raw on this camera, then definitely it's something that we can offer to our customers with a future firmware.
Cool. The other thing I noticed is that the LCD screen is a little bit smaller.
You were going to bring that up,
Dave.
Dave.
Was anybody going to notice? Like, the screen is smaller. It's nicer. I have the camera here, and I was actually just playing around with it, and the screen is remarkably sharp and bright and nice. But yeah, smaller. Why is it smaller?
That I don't have an answer for. It's actually 0.2 inches, so it's minimally smaller, and it's not really noticeable. I think what people will notice when they look at the screen is the brightness, and the colors are more robust and true to life. That will stand out more than the fact that it's 0.2 inches smaller.
So do you find people are primarily using the LCD screen more than the electronic viewfinder? Because that stayed the same as the GH5.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on the use case scenario, right? What have you got it mounted on? Is it something that you're going to use a viewfinder or the LCD for? We just, I think, felt that the resolution of the viewfinder, almost 3.7 million dots, was completely acceptable for this kind of product. If we had put a higher resolution viewfinder on there, it would have run down the battery faster, which we didn't want to do.
Okay. So I have the camera that's plugged into a stream, and if Drew and Gary say we can turn it on, I'm going to turn it on.
This might scare people a little bit.
Yes.
I'm usually not this close to the camera.
There we go. So our feed right now is on Dave. He's looking very suave. There we go.
That's all I can handle. That's all I can handle.
Yeah. So, obviously we have the full HDMI port, which we love, and that was on the
Every
GH5
camera
as
should
well.
have a full-size HDMI.
And so, round of applause that they've kept that in. But of course, I want to kind of take it back to or talk about the streaming capabilities, and I want to know a little bit more about what you found in the field.
So we found it was surprisingly easy to hook up, right? Once we kind of got the flow and how they made it work, and it was It was great. We were out in the field. We found you can stream up to 16 bits or megabits per second. However, you have to have a very strong connection for that. And it's just, we stepped it down to 8 bits and we had no troubles whatsoever. And it was great that way. And it was like freeing to not have to lug a computer around and not have to worry about extra gear. You go with a phone and the camera and away you go.
Anything to add, Drew? So Drew is part of our TCSTV live dream team, and he's just like nodding. He's so happy. Actually, here, look, I'm gonna put this on. You can see him.
I'm hopeful that with the advent of
All right,
5.
there we go. There's Drew. Say hi. We have Gary as well. Yeah, but they're very excited about all of these live streaming features, and we've been doing a lot of different stuff. We've been testing things out, and I think that there's a lot of potential for where live streaming is going to go. I mean, as we start getting back into quote unquote regular life, I mean, being able to showcase different experiences no matter where you are, I think there's some cool potential there, and it's great to see that there's some proprietary setup again for YouTube and Facebook. And then there's also the ability to just use a stream key and be able to use other sources like Twitch or if you have like your own live stream website.
So just being able to create much higher quality content with more minimal gear, it's fantastic. So I think it's going to be really adopted to different live streamers. They're going to love it.
Yeah.
And I just
Absolutely.
got a message today from one of our Lumix ambassadors who does a lot of wedding shooting, and he's had ton of people asking for, can you do a 1 camera setup live stream? Because he's not a big outfit. He, has 1 or 2 people working for him, but he's like, this is incredible. This is going to really revolutionize my business because now I can set up, on a tripod, this camera, hook it up to the router or the phone, have that just going while I'm moving around, getting all those other close-up shots, and you can do the wide angle live stream. I think for houses of worship, they've really come into live streaming since COVID hit because they needed a way to get to their audience. Live music, theater, there's so many options for it now, and we're just making it more mobile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so even though this Mark II camera didn't have like massive spec upgrades, I was pretty pleased to see that the processor is allowing more of those firmware updates because the GH5 is a 4-year-old camera, which these days is a fairly long life cycle for a mirrorless camera. We don't really see that as much in the current lineup of cameras, and so. I think even though the upgrades were kind of minor, it was interesting to see that the GH6 was also announced we have 3 specs basically and a price, and we know kind of like what this camera might be positioned at. But what was the thinking behind that? As like, what are you trying to tell creators with this announcement? Should they just keep waiting if they're a more serious videographer? Is it just a commitment to the lineup further? What do you think the intention was?
The whole purpose is just to offer people more choice, but we wanted to let them know what our strategy was at this time. So we don't come out with a GH5 Mark II and 6 months later we say, oh, guess what? There's a GH6, and people get upset about that.
People would be pretty mad.
These are not cheap, these are a lot of money, and people are spending their money because they want a system. And if you release a new system 3 months after the first one, then, you're not really doing your customers a favor. So this way we offer 2 different choices to our customers. One, the GH5 Mark II, which would be kind of medium price point, and GH6, which would be a higher price point, but it's going to come with all the bells and whistles. We only announced a few specs today, but there's a lot more that we haven't talked about that we will be announcing later this year. So that's the choice. Do you just want a slight upgrade from your GH5 for not very much money? You can use all your same accessories. You can use all your same batteries. It's not a massive investment. Or wait for GH6 if you need that 4K 120, if you need that 10-bit 5.7K 60p video, if you want or are excited about our brand new sensor that we're going to unveil, those kind of things. So we just wanted to tease people. Here's what you can expect. but it's also at a higher price point. So you have to look at what your needs are. You have to look at what your budget is and figure out which camera will work best for you. And just so people know, Canadian price point of GH6 will be approximately $3,200.
Okay, so really
For the body.
the Mark II is kind of just sandwiched between the GH5 and then the GH6. Oh my gosh, we need a better naming convention. And then, yeah, like the S5 is also kind of priced around that same. So I assume you're kind of looking for like a similar type of user of what would be attracted to the S5.
Yeah, the GH6 will be the true successor to GH5. It will be our flagship. It will be the pioneer of our GH line, whereas GH5 Mark II is kind of an offshoot. We're offering some different specs that we never had in the GH lineup before. So hopefully we're surprising and delighting our customers.
Now, on that note, I mean, the GH5 has been in market for 4 years, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of cool stuff. So what are some of the standout like projects that you've seen that people have done with GH5?
Well, the first one that comes to my mind, because it blows me away, is a gentleman that I know up in Churchill, Manitoba, went on a dog sled odyssey with GH5. So they dog sledded all the way from Churchill out to St. John's, New Brunswick. So it was about 3,500 kilometers, I believe. It was around minus 30 to minus 40 Celsius the whole time. And he used GH5 the whole way to document, what they saw, what they did every day. And in those temperatures, it's tough on cameras. Mm-hmm. And, he said he couldn't believe, he was blown away by the way the camera stood up to that kind of temperature. And battery life was better than he expected, So I always kind of think of that as if a camera can operate up to 40 degrees Celsius for thermal management, yet survive in minus 40 degrees Celsius, that's a workhorse, and that's what we need in Canada, because we don't all have the same weather. We don't all have nice Vancouver temperatures all the time.
Those are pretty much a Canadian vacation there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, our temperature can fluctuate. What did we have last week? We had 28 degrees Celsius, and then like 3 days later, we were hitting 0. We were all like bringing our plants inside that we, put in the flower beds. But
we can attest. I mean, we've put our GH5 through all kinds of stuff over the years, and it's still going strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And even, I mean, we had the GH5 with us in the Yukon, and same thing, like Micro Four Thirds, that definitely seems to be a big advantage with both Panasonic and Olympus, is that they seem to work really well in very frigid temperatures. We do not work so well, not as good as Peter Mather or some of the other guys, but yeah, no, it's definitely a good story there. We have a question from Post Color Gear, wanting to know, do you know if there's any talk about a G9 follow-up, or should G9 users potentially consider a GH5 Mark II for things like the live streaming?
If you're looking for live streaming, then yes, definitely GH5 Mark II is the way to go. As of right now, I can't give you any information on a G9 successor. So sorry, there's no updates right there. We did add some firmware to it, or announce some firmware today. So there's new updates to it. But as for its successor model, I'm sorry, I don't have any info to share at this point in time.
Oh, and Marty Clutch was asking if the GH6 will be full frame. I'll let Daniel answer that one to explain the GH lineup there.
So the GH lineup is specifically Micro Four Thirds, which is a 2-time crop over full frame. Our professional full frame models would be the S1H, the S1, and the S5.
Awesome. And from Charbax, this is kind of more of a comment, but they're saying that they don't want a G9 follow-up. They would like to see all that one could want from a G10 to be in the GH6.
Oh, okay.
So if you make that happen, that'd be great.
Believe it or not, we had a G10 years and years and years ago. This was probably, I'm going to say 2010, 2011. We actually had a G10 model. So they definitely need to come up with a new
They
model.
use that number already.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's actually very exciting is the announcement of the new lens.
Yes.
The 25 to
have
50.
Have you guys got your hands on that?
Unfortunately not. I've just seen the beauty shot that we were given. So I'm desperately waiting to try it. I know a lot of people are eagerly looking forward to this. It is a 25 to 50 millimeter f17 lens. So if anyone's familiar with our 10 to 25 1.7, you can kind of guess what's going to be in this sister lens or brother lens.
Yeah, we love that 10 to 25 is a fantastic lens, breathing corrected, works wonderful. It's an incredible lens for the Micro Four Thirds system.
Yeah, it was a very smooth lens, and actually we have a review of that lens from, I think it was last spring.
Yeah.
So you can check that out if you want to see, like Trish said, maybe some of the features that we can expect, especially on the video side. But again, yeah, just a really smooth, nice lens for lots of different uses. That's great. Okay, well, I think we are getting kind of to the end of our questions here. If you have a couple more, feel free to put them in. Yeah, actually, I was curious if there's any other like favorite Micro Four Thirds lenses that you guys using. I know, Trish, you're probably just like eagerly waiting to go travel. I know you do a ton of travel around the world normally. So what is your go-to package normally?
I would say my all-time most used lens is the 12 to 60, just because of that focal length for what I do is wonderful. But for the times I went to shoot wildlife, I love the Leica 200 mil. It is worth every penny and gram of weight on that because of the beautiful, beautiful photos. So sharp. I took it up to Churchill. I took it on safari. That's great.
Yeah, we've taken that lens out on a couple of reviews, and it is fantastic, right? It is great. Are there any other crazy cool lenses on the horizon you don't know about yet? Maybe. I love the 1-2 combination you guys have of that 10-25 and 25.
Like wink, wink, winks, if you know things. Actually, this is another question that might kind of relate to the partnership that you guys have with Leica and Sigma, the alliance.
Oh.
But they want to know if there's any talk about more third-party lenses for the S series, because right now there's not a lot of options. Like, have you guys heard of anything new on the horizon with Sigma for L-mount lenses?
I haven't heard anything more coming out lately. Our head of our imaging department in Japan did sort of hint that maybe someone else might be joining the L-mount alliance, but it wasn't firm, so I'm not sure if that's real or not, but it's a possibility. But
on that note, I did want to highlight the wonderful Sigma 28 to 70 f2.8. Wonderful light package. It pairs up phenomenally with the S5. Professional gear at a very light, very affordable system if you want to go full frame.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us tonight for this tech talk. It's been a pleasure just kind of nerding out on some of the specs and details. Yeah, did you have any final thoughts, Dave?
I want people to like really take a look at this camera in their live streaming, ability. I mean, the fact that you have a really competent video camera that's capable of delivering some great results. If you watch our channel for the last several years, it's the camera that we've been using with good reason. Yeah,
and I mean, we can't deny the fact that every time we do a video, sometimes I feel almost sad about the camera that we're reviewing, because sometimes it does get overshadowed by people saying like, that's great about the camera you're reviewing, but what did you shoot this on? And I always send those messages to Tricia, because it's true. I mean, it's footage that's easy to grade. It's great to work with. And it's nice to see this continue on. And I think it's something that we want to upgrade in our kit
Wink,
For
wink.
the new processor. We want that autofocus. I will say, like on the GH5, we often would just do a lot of manual focusing. So it's great to see the development of better autofocus system, because if we are able to move to more like autofocus type setup, then that would help us in the field. And not that we want to, not have Drew film us or anything, but you can put on a tripod.
But it's very reassuring that you guys are committed to the Micro Four Thirds. That if you've invested over the years in GH4, GH5, now GH5 Mark II now, and the various lenses, that you have some exciting models coming out.
Yeah. Oh, we have a quick question. Wanting to know if there will ever be any internal neutral density system like Olympus cameras have. With the waterfall features.
Live composite.
The live composite. Yes, because you mentioned.
I want to put Japan on the hot seat. I know they're probably going to be mad at me, but I think a couple of years ago at NAB, it was that we were teasing at this organic sensor that had that built-in neutral density. So I don't know, but it would be great if we could get some of those features into either the next GH or S1H series camera. That's what I'm hoping. I don't know, but the future's out there.
Awesome. And a couple of comments from people. Again, thanks for joining us. And I know it's really hard right now. We all want to get out and do more shooting, like have some cool subjects to shoot. And so like keep hanging in there. We'd love to see you guys on these live events, but we'd also like to see you in person again soon too. So stay tuned. We have more of this great stuff coming on. And again, thanks to Trisha and to Daniel and to Drew, Riley, Gary, the whole TCSTV dream team. And we'll see you guys again soon.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it. And I hope everyone comes to the camera store to check out the new camera when it arrives. It should be available in Canada, fingers crossed, in July. I can't make any promises because shipping, as everyone knows, has become a huge problem since COVID. But July is what we're aiming for. So please, hopefully, come out to the store and try it out when it's there.
Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome, guys.
Great.